Welcome to the Bombay Sport Exchange. My name is K. Srinivas Rao. It's the IPL time. The IPL is upon us. The CEO at GeoStar for Sports, Mr. Sanjog Gupta. Sanjog was heading sports at Star and then Disney Star for more than a decade, and now he's heading sports at GeoStar.
Firstly, thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of this show, KSR. We've discussed the prospect of you having a show about the business of sport for a while. So I'm glad that this is coming together, and I feel deeply honored that you would think I should merit a spot on the show.
There's a reason for it, Sanjog. The reason being that I interact with a lot of people in the industry from time to time. I've rarely seen someone who's kind of tracked cricket by being on the field and probably kind of being inside air conditioned rooms. Kind of very few people get both right, and I've seen you doing this for a very long time. I have learnt a lot from Sanjog, from an industry standpoint over the years. So brilliant time to start this conversation.
You're being very kind, which you generally aren't, but thank you so much for being so.
The IPL is upon us. The mother of all mergers happened. Geo and Disney came together, and television's biggest property is now, kind of about to begin. What do you make of it? Give us the long and short of what is happening.
You know this, KSR, it would be a disservice to IPL to call it television's biggest property. It is genuinely a cultural phenomenon in this country. It is genuinely a 2.5 month comma in the nation's journey, where the nation pauses, engages deeply with a singular cultural phenomenon that unfolds over 74 matches in 2.5 months, and is completely immersed in various facets of this cultural phenomenon. For some, it is the most exciting cricket that's played between the most exciting and the best cricketers from all over the world. For others, it's a unmissable moment to be a part of. For some, it's just a conversation starter. And for many, it's also a way of connecting with people that they generally don't connect with. We believe as the vehicle or the bridge that exists between the field of play and the play button on people's screens. We take the responsibility very seriously of bringing alive this cultural phenomenon in all its splendor and its glory. At one end of the spectrum, we are trying to make the magnificence of IPL even larger, elevate the spectacle that it is. At the other end of the spectrum, we are also trying to personalize the experience for a fan, where every fan who's a part of this larger aggregate still finds something more interesting, more engaging, more interesting about the IPL every year. So it's as much about millions as it is about the market of one. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to straddle both.
As I've always said, IPL is probably only 25% cricket, 25%, 75% it's everything else, business, entertainment. It's like an Indian thali, right? I mean, there is something on the plate for everyone. There is dal, roti, rice, and yet you will find something that will probably serve your palate.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. Since 2018, which is when we acquired the rights to IPL for Star at that time, on television viewership, it has grown close to 40%. Now, for an evolved, mature property that the IPL already was in 2018, to grow as significantly as that shows two things. One, that the property always had the immense potential to go from where it was to unseen heights. And two, it shows the potential of this market and the immense headroom for growth that the market has if you're willing to reimagine the possibilities. And that's where this IPL journey for Star started with. And now it continues with JioStar, where again, the ambition is to continue on the growth trajectory and reach 1 billion viewers this year, duplicated. We have, as you said, after the merger, the property is across the JioStar network on linear, on mobile screens, and on CTV. And what we want to achieve by the end of IPL is engage with 1 billion people across all our platforms, across the length and breadth of our programming, across the various hyper personalized experiences that we're looking to offer, and of course, across the platforms where we are looking to recruit new audiences on.
There's a lot in terms of the growth story that you're talking about and those heady days at Star. I'm going to come back to all of those. Before that, you used a very important word. You said television, kind of, that makes me, kind of go back to the last 2 years of this right cycle. This is the third year. So when the rights were sold for the last time, I remember the first year there was much ado about kind of how the digital world is upon us, and television may probably not be the future that it was kind of had been for so long. Now that the dust has settled, I mean, kind of, we know for a fact that the television is not going away anywhere in a hurry. I mean, unlike the conversation which kind of had enveloped our minds until maybe 2 years ago, where probably there was this line of thought that because the internet has taken over our lives and the OTT was upon us, we thought probably, kind of the television space was at a risk. In a country like India, is television going away anywhere? And what do you make of it from a current perspective?
The growth on digital platforms has been phenomenal, right? Both in terms of the number of screens available and the number of users accessible. The potential of the digital delivery method of IPL reaching fans is only growing. We've seen the access to IPL multiply on the back of a screen which is always in your pocket. On the flip side, there is also the facet of sports and live sport being as much a lean back community watch together experience, which truly comes alive when you're in front of a big screen, or as you said, in front of the television. So there is enough room for growth for both sets of experiences. In fact, both sets of experiences may be truly complementary in some cases, where the experience of a fan of the IPL becomes even more immersive. Yes, we will customize the experiences for the viewing behavior that is uniquely demonstrated on each of the screens. Our ambition for growth across our linear platform, which is Star Sports, is just as ambitious as our ambition for growth on digital. It's just that the headroom for growth on digital platforms, by virtue of the sheer number of screens available for us to make the IPL accessible, are far higher in the case of the mobile screens as compared to the living room devices. If you think that India has about 250 to 270 million households, give or take, only about 150 to 160 million currently have a living room device which they can watch any content on. That's the headroom for growth for all living room devices. And that choice will always rest with the consumer. What we definitely want to do is to try and create multiple touch points for the consumer or the fan with the IPL across all the devices and all the potential cultural touch points that he or she may have, which he or she can engage with IPL on.
You know, of all that you said, there are so many questions that further come to mind. But before I go further on this, I first want you to kind of talk about, what's on the shelf at JioStar this year, from an IPL standpoint. I want to first get done with that in terms of, just give us all the details on, what is JioStar planning, what are the packages on board, and And with regards to that, I have further questions, but I'll first wait for this to.
We are looking to dial up on two big vectors. One vector is the splendor, magnificence, scale of IPL, right? And how do you elevate the stature of this cultural phenomenon, which is going to envelop our lives in different ways? At the other end of the spectrum, it's also to dial up how do we serve many fans, many different experiences across many different touch points, and build out what we believe is almost a suite of experiences which range from a lean back experience on the linear television to a verticalized 6-inch experience made for mobile. And in between all that, we have all the languages that we want to use to make IPL as inclusive as possible on JioStar, ranging from Hindi, Bhojpuri, Haryanvi, Marathi, etc. We want to continue to shape the regional content / cultural ecosystem around IPL in Karnataka, AP, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu, because we believe there is the opportunity for the IPL to go much deeper with not just the live event itself, but also the programming slate that we build around it.
Demographics.
And also newer demographics that we want to explore in those regions. So we've actually launched a second set of channels in each of these 3 markets and 4 states to cater to the audience. We are now present in 8 out of 10 homes across the country with the Star Sports network as far as the linear distribution is concerned. We also see the 650 million smartphones and 200 million odd feature phones. We would like each of those screens to become a touch point for engagement for IPL. And then we see a growing community of connected televisions being leveraged in very different ways, which is almost bringing together the lean back experience of linear television and the lean in experience of a digital mode of delivery, where you are no longer restricted to watching a service or a feed, but can actually engage with it because the experience and the design of that experience is truly interactive, where you can go and choose the camera that you want to use to watch the game, where you can go and access HeroCam, which is a curated feed from cameras that are basically allowing you to watch the hero that you want to watch while watching the game.
Don't you think we already should start planning another podcast? Purely, when the subject of demographics in a country like India, we are talking about a country where almost every 200 kilometers the dialect changes, food habits change. It's a very, very complicated country, a fun country, and kind of everything is new. Every 200 kilometers you drive around in a country like India, you experience something new. And in a country like that, when you talk about going last mile, I can imagine what kind of notes that you all have from the last 14, 15 years of, having been in this space. Again, I have questions with regards to this, but before I move further, you want to quickly touch upon any particular packages, etc., that you all have planned, anything that you want to kind of share in specific?
I think the traditional broadcast, as it was known, was basically oriented to serving many fans as one. What we want to do is, instead of serving many fans as one, we actually want to serve, if possible, one fan as many. So the same fan, when he or she is watching on a 6-inch screen, is being served an experience which has been designed for the intuitive nature of engagement he has on the mobile screen, which is full customization and also the enablement of viewing while multitasking on that same phone screen. So instead of holding the phone in landscape mode and watching the sport in a manner which you never really engage with your 6-inch device with, we are enabling a way of watching the live stream and actually fashioning the live stream to a way of watching which is vertical. And what we are doing this year is we are taking it to the next level where the intuitive experience of swiping to experience video, which is increasingly the way that short form video is being consumed. So, effectively, in the 15th over of a game, if you want to see what happened in the power play or who scored a 50 or how was the fourth wicket taken, you no longer have to go and try to find that key moment. There is also a lot of focus, and I know you said we'll come to demographics, so I won't get to that, but there is a lot of focus on how do you recruit new audiences and how do you expand the engagement of light viewers who tend to sample but not engage more deeply. And that's obviously where real growth comes from. We have a set of core viewers who watch a lot of IPL, but we also have a lot of viewers or fans whose engagement with IPL is limited. So what we want to do is we want to fashion an experience for them too, and not limit the experience only to those who are already core fans of IPL.
Yeah, before I get to that, I mean, I just sincerely hope, I mean, as somebody who tracks cricket in this country and globally, I hope federations that run cricket are probably thinking along the lines that the broadcaster is thinking, kind of. I just get this feeling that the broadcaster is kind of thinking from top of a peak where, I think the federations are yet to reach. I think someday we should see that balance.
Actually, Srini, instead of looking at it from the top of the peak, we are actually looking at it right from the bottom. Right, the challenge for us, and it's the only challenge that we always look to solve for, is the challenge which you outlined, which is diversity. How do you solve for a very large set of significant niches of consumers who want to experience the game very differently?
Which is what I was coming to, Sanjog. You used, when I said customization, you used a very important word in the previous answer, addressable, kind of broadcast. From that standpoint, I'll simplify my question. Like if I'm watching a game and I'm watching it with a bunch of friends who are my age, and kind of obviously we're having a good time, and we suddenly there is an ad that comes that nobody in the room can relate with. Let's say it's like a Cerelac ad for babies, right? And there are like some 30-year-olds sitting in a room who can't identify with an ad, right? How far are we from it? When you mention addressable television, how far are we from that level of customization where I don't mind watching commercials, I don't mind watching, because it's part of cricket. I mean, it's the beauty of cricket. But how can I probably, or how can the broadcaster help the consumer identify with
I think it's a journey. I Serving IPL on digital platforms has already enabled some level of targeting and customization. We are already serving differentiated ad feeds as part of the overall experience that is being served to fans. But just the way that we are on a journey of hyper personalization, where, as I said, ideally, if there was a way for us to be able to serve the market of one, that journey is true for advertising as well. Eventually, the holy grail for us is to be able to serve both aggregates and the market of one. World over, the allure of live sport for advertisers is on three counts. One, nothing aggregates audiences all at one time, like live sport, meaningful live sport does. Two, there have been enough studies which suggest that the levels of immersion by virtue of the passion expressed for what's happening on screen automatically leads to better receipt of the messaging that brands want to deliver. You receive the messaging much more, and thus the saliency of the brand improves. And Finally, there is also the associative value. When you associate with IPL on JioStar, you're not just associating with the property that delivers eyeballs, you're associating with the property that has immense cultural reach. Right? When you're a part of a conversation which is pretty much going to dominate all conversations and search volumes over the next 2.5 months. So there is immense associative value that brands derive from their association with a property such as IPL and many other sporting properties around the world.
Yeah, but no property is deriving the kind of value that the IPL is deriving in terms of cost.
So, like I said, there are three pillars. There's reach, saliency, associative value. And IPL is perhaps one of those few properties which delivers on all three. And that is why it is an unmissable part of most advertisers' annual plans. The question that you asked, there are a lot of advertisers who lose out on IPL because they're not looking for aggregated reach. They're looking for the associative value, they are looking for saliency, but they want the targeting to be for a specific demographic which is further sliced by the areas that they may be in. And that's the market of one. You are constantly looking to move towards a situation where, if required, for an advertiser, you can target the ads on a live stream to specific cohorts of audiences that the advertiser wants.
You're almost making me think like, kind of the next time when the BCCI decides to sell broadcast rights, what's going on in my mind when I'm listening to you is that, kind of when they're deciding on the packages that they divide the broadcast rights into, they might as well go into 10 different regions from a franchise perspective, city-based, this thing in terms of selling those packages, and the broadcaster probably, segregating it into what kind of advertising models can he build in those zones respectively. I'm just...
Yeah, I think the question that one needs to ask is what yields maximum value at an aggregate. For us, it is both, right? Because what we want to do is we definitely want to deliver aggregated reach to the 31 sponsors that have come on board Star Sports and Jio Hotstar, right? What they're looking for is a combination of aggregated reach, brand saliency, and associative value. And we want to deliver the largest possible audience to them. But at the same time, and there is a significant mid-market journey where there are hundreds of other advertisers that will also be a part of the IPL phenomenon over the next 2.5 months.
Probably my question again touches that point where I'm saying that the cost of IPL, the cost of showing IPL has been rising with each sale of rights every 5 years, kind of. Now, from that perspective, has the advertisers' appetite gone up equally high, or rather kind of has it been kind of rising at the same level as the costs that are probably kind of going up in terms of buying those IPL rights? I don't know if I'm like putting this question correctly. What I'm trying to say is, every 5 years we want the value of IPL rights to kind of, the federation expects the value of IPL rights to double, triple, and it takes a lot of joy in terms of how these 48,000 CR. I mean, it was well advertised what kind of figure the IPL. Is the advertiser's appetite increasing at the same value? What does...
Without getting into the specifics of a particular set of rights and their value.
IPL?
Yeah, let me just say, there are three forces at play, right? The first force at play is the overall monetization model around IPL, and advertising revenues on either platform, linear, digital, and now digital also split between mobile and CTV. All three models actually, while they operate in parallel, they also operate independently, right? And yes, there is the ambition to grow monetization across all three, but the solution to the monetization challenge for all three may be very different. So you're almost looking at three advertising vehicles, which could then potentially be fragmented further by the audiences that you can serve if you were to start targeting. And there are some steps that we have already taken in that journey, but that journey is still unfolding, right? And then, of course, beyond advertising revenues, you're also looking at the monetization model of distribution, subscription, etc. So, and in a nutshell, that monetization model needs to be reset each time that a new right cycle is upon us.
Interesting when you mentioned monetization models, because I've always believed that at the value at which the IPL rights are being sold, like kind of until probably 15 years ago, in cricket, the rental business of cricket, you would buy rights at whatever 100 rupees, sell it at 105 rupees, and the broadcaster would pocket those 5 rupees by being in the rental business. Is the broadcast of cricket or the broadcast of sport going forward? It's not the same model anymore, where I believe where it has changed is sport only is a catalyst which is allowing the broadcaster to probably sell other products at a greater value. For example, in terms of JioStar, from the outside, when I'm looking at cricket as a product with JioStar, Jio per se is looking at using cricket as a catalyst to maybe sell data, maybe sell SIM cards, maybe look at retail. I'm just saying that has cricket gone on to become a catalyst then being the primary product?
I think live sport globally has always had network value. Uh, you look at acquisitions of NBA and NFL rights over the years by multiple broadcasters, they've always been used to further the interests of the network. So I think the aggregative capacity of a live sporting property, especially cricketing properties, tends to be a network builder in any case. It also helps recruit audiences and enabling those audiences to experience content on the platform which goes beyond just the property itself. So you're absolutely right. The value of the cricket rights is not limited to the directly attributable revenue that the cricket rights yield, but also include the indirect network value that the rights could yield if leveraged well. And there's a big if there. And that if comes from how good is your business model or how well designed is your business model to be able to harness. Yeah, I mean, it has to be market specific, and you have to keep the the consumer at the core of it. I was mentioning to you the one part of our challenge always is diversity, and the other part of the challenge, which we have to be deeply cognizant of, is that the consumer is evolving more rapidly than ever before. If you were to look back at what your life looked like 5 years back and compare it to what your life looks like now, there's a sea change. And what we are trying to do, because we are in the business of serving fans and we are in the business of serving consumers, is that on one side, you're trying to fashion the best experience possible for a certain property, but at the other end, you're also trying to fashion the best experience possible for the consumer or the fan. And the match of that is really resulting in success.
Yeah, but Sanchok, all these answers, so many brilliant points that you make here. But from a cricketing standpoint, if I were to start looking for answers on many of these aspects, probably it all boils down to how much is India involved in in that plate that we're talking about. I'll just why I'm saying this is because on one hand we have a big cricketing debate today is which format is going to survive and which format will not. Is Test going to survive or is Test cricket going to die? Does ODI cricket have any future? And of course, is T20 the future? Now I'm sitting in front of the broadcaster in cricket. Now tell me which format is dying, because in this recent Border Gavaskar Trophy, I would like to believe that this was one of the greatest series in terms of the numbers that you all kind of. The Champions Trophy, which just concluded with India winning the tournament. Again, the ODI tournament, but the numbers were phenomenal. So Is any format dying, or is it about no format will die as long as India continues to be there in the frame? And that answers so many other questions, right? I mean, for only from a broadcast standpoint, purely because people love to look at numbers, and y'all are the guys like kind of generating these numbers. So, for example, when these rights were being sold, I never thought really that anybody like Disney owned every single right in whether it's ICC, IPL, BCCI. I never thought anybody would once again sit on all the rights once again, with the entire umbrella. It's happened again where you all have JioStar has ICC, you all have BCCI, and you all have the IPL. How India centric is this, kind of demand and supply space, like kind of?
Look, I think it's well known that the largest market for cricket in terms of audience is India. And any cricket, if it has to succeed at scale, will have to have an India strategy because it is, the home to the largest aggregate of cricket fans in the world. I think the conversation at times about formats tends to be reductive, and we should not have that conversation without understanding the nuances involved in the sport itself. The Border Gavaskar Trophy, and you took that example of India tour of Australia, was the second most watched test series in the history of Indian television. That tells you that when the two potentially best teams in the world compete against each other with the context of a rivalry that has been fashioned ever since Steve Waugh called India the final frontier, there is interest. And that significant interest leads to viewership. But that's not necessarily an endorsement of the format. The question to ask is, if the same format was not played between those two nations, but played between India and another nation who perhaps doesn't enjoy the same rivalry or doesn't have as strong a team, will it still yield record-breaking viewership? And the answer suddenly isn't the same. And the same is true for ODI. Even in the ODI format, it would be wrong to believe that the success of Champions Trophy is necessarily a generalized endorsement of the ODI format. That would be unfair.
Well, I've been of this belief that had the 2023 World Cup not been played in India, probably we wouldn't really be looking at ODIs with such warmth that we're looking at, but that's a very personal opinion. I know we are short on time, but I'll quickly wrap up with these two, and I'll put the cat among the pigeons here. I wanted to answer this. Is BGT bigger than the Ashes?
Of course it is. There is no comparison. You look at the total number of fans who engage with the Ashes and compare it to the total number of fans who engage with the Border Gavaskar Trophy. The answer to that could potentially be 1:10. The rivalry between India and Australia, I would say, comes second only to the rivalry between India and Pakistan.
Where I'm coming from is I'm just trying to identify like just BGT, like is BGT right now like the undisputed number one, or is there potential for any other property to get anywhere close to it?
I'll tell you one thing. The India-Australia rivalry now may not have the cultural significance or the historic significance that the India-Pakistan rivalry has, but in terms of a cricketing rivalry is definitely up there, if not slightly ahead of the India-Pakistan rivalry. Is there anything that compares with these two? The ambition should be for multiple such rivalries to emerge, because rivalries and battles and competitions and the competitive nature of those competitions is a big ingredient in the success of any tourney, any cricketing competition.
The way the ICC contests have been between India and New Zealand, why not? I mean, it could go on to become the next
Yeah,
big thing. India Australia wasn't made overnight. I mean, it took
absolutely.
25
In
years.
fact, there is a great deal of interest in India versus New Zealand games for that very reason. The mistake that people make at times is that they try to conjure rivalries when there aren't any. There is authenticity to that rivalry. One, as you said, the contests between India and New Zealand in ICC competitions tend to be fairly close. The other is a context in which we had tried to package this rivalry at one point was fire versus ice. India was playing its cricket with a certain intensity, with a certain exuberance, with a certain attitude, and here was New Zealand, who were the perennial nice guys, right? They were always about the grit and about the humility and always understated, and those styles of play could potentially yield a rivalry and get you to take sides.
This can just go on and on and on. I know you're short on time. I'll wrap this up because this conversation was essentially about the IPL. I'll just end this with, kind of a very, I'm sure even the viewers would want to understand this. In a country as complicated as India in terms of the diversity it has, what are the numbers telling you in terms of the regional broadcast? I really want to understand, like, obviously Hindi is the undisputed biggest market, almost what, 70 odd percent.
A little less, about 65, 66%.
English and Tamil are probably at par with each other.
That's
purely
correct.
in terms of the eyeballs.
Hindi is one across TV and digital,
Right.
By the sheer size of the audience. English would pretty much be second, although tied for second with Tamil on TV. On digital, it would be second. The third on digital, interestingly, would probably be Bhojpuri.
Really?
On digital, yes. And on television, while English and Tamil would be close, the third could potentially be Telugu.
Okay.
So it does differ, and that difference is also an outcome of the audience available in front of the relevant screens, right? So because we see penetration of digital devices being significantly more in the northern belt,
And these are particularly IPL numbers that you're talking about?
I was referring to IPL. I think that's where the distinction between linear and digital comes around, where the southern states, by virtue of deeper penetration of cable and satellite, tend to have higher indexation of viewership, while as on digital, by virtue of markets like UP, Bihar, Maharashtra, and a few others, making up a higher share of the total audience, you see languages from the Gangetic belts actually showing up higher. So whether it's Bhojpuri, we've seen a tremendous response even to Bengali. So digital tends to be more around the what in in media parlance we call the Hindi speaking markets plus, and the linear viewing tends to be more the southern markets.
This market is so deep that probably this conversation can never end. I mean, as he was speaking, what came to my mind is when he's speaking about the numbers that, let's say, a language like Telugu is generating, that I really want to know what is the Rayalaseema dialect, what numbers are coming from the Rayalaseema dialect as compared to the numbers that are coming from the Telangana dialect and all. And please comment in the video and tell me if you want another conversation, a deeper conversation with this man. It's difficult to get his time, but I'm sure he will. For this brilliant conversation. Thank you, Sanjog. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
My pleasure, KSR. And we should definitely find some time in the future to discuss other
I hope
things.
It's a great IPL, and that gives you a reason.
Thank you so much. I hope viewers enjoy it just as much as we enjoy making it for them.
Pleasure.
Thanks.